The knock on my door came in a pattern only one person in the galaxy knew. 3 taps, a pause, 2 more taps. It was my son's signal, the one I taught him when he was a boy. But my son was thousands of light years away on a research station, and the person standing outside my door right now was not him. I opened the door and found 2 officers from the Empire's compliance division standing in the hallway. Their armor was dark and polished, and their faces showed nothing. "Daniel Hart," the taller one said, reading from a small screen. "Your son, Noah Hart, has been taken into custody. He is being questioned about activities at Kessa Station." I kept my voice calm. "He is a scientist. He studies plants." "He is a person of interest," the officer replied. "You will be informed when there is more to share." They turned and left without asking me a single question about myself. That was their first mistake, though they would not understand this until much later. Somewhere in an old record buried deep in Imperial files, there was a name attached to hundreds of confirmed actions during the border conflict. That name was marked as gone, no longer active. In truth, the man behind that name had not disappeared. He had simply chosen to become a father instead of a soldier. I walked to my workbench and looked down at the long case I had not opened in 9 years. My hands remembered it before my mind did. I did not rush. Rushing gets people killed, and I intended to stay alive long enough to bring my son home. I spent 2 full days studying every detail I could gather about Kessa Station. I learned the routine of the guards, the timing of their rounds, and the small gap in their coverage that repeated every few minutes. Most people never notice these gaps, because they are looking for danger in the wrong places. I had spent my whole life training myself to see what others missed. A cargo pilot named Owen Bell agreed to fly me close to the station. He did not ask why. Years ago, during the war, I had helped him escape a situation that should have ended his life. He remembered that debt, and he repaid it without a single question. When we reached the edge of the station's sensor range, Owen looked at me with real worry in his eyes. "You sure about this, Daniel? That place is guarded like a fortress." "Every fortress has a weak point," I said. "You just have to be patient enough to find it." He nodded slowly and prepared the small transport pod that would carry me the rest of the way in silence. The station was cold and quiet when I slipped inside through a maintenance passage that had not been used in years. I moved carefully, keeping to the shadows, counting my steps, listening for every sound. My training had never left me, even after 9 years of quiet farming life on a small moon, far from anything important. I found the detention area on the lower level, exactly where my information said it would be. 12 people sat inside a locked room that had once been used to store cargo. Among them was my son. Noah looked thinner than I remembered, and there was a tiredness in his eyes that no young man should carry. But when he saw me through the small window in the door, something in his face changed. Hope returned to him, quiet and careful, as if he was afraid to trust it fully. I worked quickly on the door controls, using tools I had carried since my active years. Within a minute, the lock released with a soft click. "Dad," Noah whispered, stepping forward, "how did you even find this place?" "Later," I said gently. "Right now, we need to move." The other prisoners looked at me with a mix of fear and relief. I motioned for them to follow quietly. We moved through the corridor as fast as we safely could, staying close to the walls, avoiding the paths where guards usually patrolled. We almost made it to the shuttle bay without any trouble. Almost. 3 guards turned a corner ahead of us and froze when they saw our group. For a moment, nobody moved. Then one of them reached for the alarm on his wrist. I stepped forward, faster than thought, and used a small device from my jacket to disrupt the signal before it could reach anyone. The guard blinked in confusion as his alarm failed to activate. In the next few seconds, I moved past him and used careful, controlled pressure points to make all 3 guards lose consciousness without causing any lasting harm. They slumped to the floor, breathing steadily, simply unable to stay awake. Noah stared at me, his mouth slightly open. "You didn't even give them a chance to fight back." "That's the whole point," I said, checking the hallway ahead. "A fight is what happens when a plan fails. I don't like failed plans." We reached the shuttle bay just as an alarm somewhere else in the station finally began to sound. Someone had noticed something was wrong, but by then it was too late for them to stop us. Owen was waiting exactly where he said he would be, engines already warming. We loaded everyone aboard quickly, and within moments, the shuttle lifted off the platform and shot away from Kessa Station. Behind us, I could see small defense turrets trying to lock onto our position, but Owen's flying was sharp and unpredictable, weaving through debris fields left over from old mining operations nearby. The turrets lost their track on us within seconds, unable to get a clean line. Once we entered open space and the station shrank into the distance, the tension in the shuttle began to ease. The other freed prisoners thanked us quietly, still shaking from the experience, and Noah finally sat down beside me, his hands trembling slightly. "You told me you worked in supply logistics for 30 years, he said. "Every holiday dinner, every conversation about your job, supply logistics." I allowed myself a small, tired smile. I was very good at knowing where things needed to be, and exactly when they needed to be there. That part was true. "That's not what I meant, Dad." I looked at him for a long moment. He deserved honesty now, more than he had ever deserved it before. "Before you were born, I served during the border conflict. I was trained to handle situations that required precision, patience, and a very steady hand. I was good at my work, too good, some might say. When the fighting ended, I chose to leave that life behind completely. I wanted you to grow up with a father, not a legend." Noah was quiet for a while, processing everything. "Is that why we moved around so much when I was little?" "Partly," I admitted. "I wanted to make sure nobody from my old life could ever find us. I thought I had done a good job of disappearing. Until today." "Until today," I agreed. The Empire, we later learned, tried to explain away what happened at Kessa Station as a simple mix-up in their paperwork. Officials claimed there had been confusion about Noah's file and the files of the others who were held there. It was, according to their public statement, all resolved quietly and without incident. No mention was made of guards found resting peacefully in a corridor, or of a shuttle that had somehow slipped past their best defenses. But within certain circles, word spread quickly. Old soldiers who had served during the border conflict began quietly asking questions. Was it really him? Had the quiet farmer everyone assumed had passed away actually returned for one night to save his son? Nobody in the Empire could confirm anything, because officially, the man they were asking about did not exist anymore. I did not care what stories spread or what questions were whispered in old barracks. My only concern had been Noah, and he was safe now, sitting beside me on Owen's little transport ship, watching the stars pass by the window with quiet wonder. "Will they come looking for you?" Noah asked after a long silence. "They might try," I said, "but they will not find much. I have spent 9 years becoming very good at being forgettable." He laughed softly, the sound easing some of the weight in my chest. "You're not forgettable, Dad. You're the least forgettable person I've ever met." "That," I said, "is exactly the problem I have spent years trying to fix." We landed back on my quiet little moon 2 days later. The fields I had planted were still growing steadily, untouched by everything that had happened far away among the stars. Noah walked beside me through the rows of green plants, breathing in air that smelled like home instead of danger. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," I said, "we go inside, and I make you the same tea I used to make when you were small. And tomorrow, you help me fix the fence on the east side, because it has been falling apart for weeks." He smiled, and for a moment, he looked exactly like the boy I remembered from years before all of this began. The Empire never officially admitted what happened at Kessa Station. Their records still show a closed case, a resolved misunderstanding, nothing more. But somewhere in their archives, a single old file was quietly reopened and studied by confused analysts who could not explain how a man marked as gone for 9 years had left such a clear, careful trail of skill behind him. They still do not know where I am. They still do not know my son's face well enough to recognize him if he passed them in a crowded street. And most importantly, they have finally learned something that every soldier who ever served with me already understood. A quiet man, tending a quiet field, is sometimes the most dangerous person in the entire galaxy, not because of what he is willing to do, but because of what he is willing to give up in order to never have to do it again. I do not regret leaving that life behind. I do not regret the years of silence, the years of simple work, the years of being nothing more than a father to my son. But I will never regret the one night I had to become something else again, just long enough to bring him home safely. Some skills never fade, no matter how long you try to forget them, and some fathers will always find a way back to their children, no matter how far the distance, no matter how many walls stand in between. That is the only truth I have ever needed to carry with me.